This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good evening everyone. Bruch Mabam. Thank you everyone for coming. We welcome all the Torah Anytime viewers. And the idea that we're going to present tonight is extremely fundamental. We all know we have Yud Gimel Ikrim, 13 principles of faith, the 13 principles of Judaism. And nevertheless, there is one principle that is so fundamental, it even precedes these 13 principles. It's so fundamental that the case could be made that this is the starting point of Judaism. And yet, it's a concept that I would venture to say most people are not familiar with. And with that introduction, let us proceed. Of course, the Yom Tov of Pesach is coming, and one of the highlights of the Haggadah are the Arba Banim, the 4 sons, the Chacham, the Rasha, the Tam, and the Shenu Yedei Elishal. And let's discuss the Chacham. In the Haggadah, if you look at number 1, the Chacham Mahu Omer. What does the wise man say? He says, Mahu Eidos, the Hachukim, HaMishpatim. What are all these laws, statutes, judgments? What are all these mitzvos? Asher Tziva Hashem Elokeinu Eslam, that God has commanded you. What is all of this? And the question that we need to ask ourselves is, what exactly is his question? If he's such a chacham, if he's so wise, then why doesn't he know? I mean, what kind of chacham doesn't know about the mitzvah of matzah? What kind of chacham doesn't know about the carbon pesach? What kind of chacham doesn't know about the maror? I mean, what's he asking? You know, it doesn't say it's a child. It calls him a chacham. A chacham means he's smart. Right? What's a chacham? A wise man. If he's a wise man, he doesn't know about the most simple mitzvahs of Judaism. He doesn't know what we're doing tonight. I mean, how could that be? How could we call him a chacham? If he's a chacham, then how could he not know about all these mitzvahs? Look, everyone knows about this. Okay. So we're going to try to delve into this concept based on something in this week's Parsha. Take a look in number 2. Okay, we have a pasuk in this week's Parsha. Vayikra Moshe el Betzalel. Moshe calls out to Betzalel via Eliyav and to his assistant Eliyav el Kol Ish Chacham Lev, and to every man who was a Chacham Lev. What's a Chacham Lev? A wise-hearted man. Asher Nasan Hashem Chachma B'Libay. That God placed wisdom in his heart. You hear this expression? Moshe called to Betzalel. There are a bunch of sheets over here and over there. Moshe calls to Betzalel, Bi'el Kol Ish Chacham Lev Asher Nasan Hashem Chachma B'Libay. Listen carefully. God called every wise-hearted man to whom he placed Chachma in his heart. By the way, if anyone wants anything to eat, there is pizza tonight, sponsored as a Chus for Shalema for Rabbi Yashiv, Rabbi Yosef Shalom ben Chayim Musha, and Rabbi Belsky, Chaim Yisrael ben Chana Tzirol, to Shimon Yoshua ben Sarah, and Sina bas Henarasha. So the pasuk says, Vayikra Moshe Betzalel, he called Kol Ish Chacham Lev, every wise-hearted man, Asher Nasan Hashem Chachma B'Libay, that God placed wisdom in his heart. That would imply that they were already a Chacham Lev, they were already wise, and after they were wise, God then placed wisdom in their heart. Right? That's what the pasuk says. Who did God give wisdom to? To the wise-hearted ones. Well, if they're wise already, why did God need to give them wisdom? And if they were not wise, then why are we calling them a Chacham Lev? I mean, what's going on? We would think, who is God going to give wisdom to? Someone who doesn't have wisdom. And yet the pasuk says, who is God giving wisdom to? The Chacham Lev. Well, if he's a Chacham Lev, if he has wisdom, what does he need God's wisdom for? And we have the same expression in last week's Parsha, in Parshas Kisisa. Like, look at number 3. Va'ani hine nasati itai esa haliyav ben achisamach lamatedan. Behold, I have given you a haliyav, the son of Achisamach lamatedan, uvelev kol chacham lev nasati chachma. And into the heart of every wise-hearted person, I gave chachma. So who is God giving chachma to? Those who are wise-hearted. Well, if they're wise-hearted, why does God need to give them wisdom? And we have a similar expression and pasuk in Sefer Daniel. In Sefer Daniel we find, okay, in Perek Beis pasuk Chaf Aleph, Yahev Chachmasa Lechakimen. God gives wisdom to the wise. Okay, that's what Daniel tells us. Look at number 4. Yahev Chachmasa Lechakimen. God gives wisdom to the wise. Well, if they're wise already, why does Hashem have to give them wisdom? And if they're not wise yet, so why are we saying that God gives wisdom to the wise? We should say God gives wisdom to the dumb, to the empty-minded. Why are we saying God gives wisdom to the wise?
Because the wise guy know what to do with the wisdom.
Right.
If he's wise, he doesn't need the wisdom. He's already wise.
But you can recognize an additional info, which...
So God only gives wisdom to someone who's already a little bit wise. Take a look at the Gemara in Brachos. Number 5. Gemara in Brachos, Daf Nun Hey. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu noisein chachma ela l'misha yesh bei chachma. God only gives wisdom to someone who already has wisdom. Shenemar, like the pasuk says in Daniel, Yahev chachmasa lechakimin. He gives wisdom to the wise, umindana liyadavina, and understanding to those who have understanding. So if you want to know, who does God give wisdom to? He doesn't give wisdom to the stupid. He doesn't give wisdom to people who are dumb. He only gives wisdom to those who are wise. The Gemara continues. Shama Rav Tachlifa bar Marava. Rav Tachlifa bar Marava heard this. The Amra Kamei de Rabbi Avo. He said this statement to Rabbi Avo that God only gives wisdom to the wise, like the pasuk says in Daniel, Yahev Chachmasa Lechakimin. Amar Lei, so Rabbi Avo said, Atun mehasam masnisula. You learn it from there. Anan mehacham masninala. We learn it from the following pasuk. Where do they learn it from? The pasuk in this week's Parsha. Uvalev kol chacham lev nasati chachma. And to the heart of every wise-hearted man, God gives wisdom. Okay? So that's the teaching that we're learning. The Gemara in Brachos tells us, based on the psukim in this week's Parsha and last week's Parsha and the psukim in Daniel, who does God select to give wisdom to? The wise. Right? God makes those who are smart, smart. Now the obvious question is, well, how do you become smart in the first place? If God only gives wisdom to the wise, how did you become wise before God made you wise? In other words, what are we saying? We're saying again, Daniel tells us, Yahev chachmasa lechakimin. God gives wisdom to the wise. Okay, that means if you're not wise, you ain't getting any wisdom.
Right.
And in order to be wise, God has to make you wise.
Right.
So how does God make anybody wise? Because how do they become wise for God to make them wise? I mean,
Because
how
God
does
makes him wise at the beginning.
No, but it says God only makes wise those who have wisdom. So how did that person have wisdom?
From Hashem.
No, but God only makes wise those people who have wisdom.
Right.
Right? Here's the cup. God will only put wisdom in the cup if the cup has wisdom in it. How did the wisdom get in the cup first for God to put any wisdom in it? If God only gives $1 to those who have $1, so how would anyone ever have $1 for God to give them $1? In other words,
Heart, right? I mean,
what? Right? That's the question. As the Nefesh HaChaim asks, if Chaim Volozhiner asks, in the Nefesh HaChaim in the Shar Dalet, if God only grants wisdom to the wise, how did anyone ever get the first piece of wisdom? Okay? Again, Yahev, that's what we're saying. That's what we're learning in Daniel. And again, Daniel is teaching us, and the Gemara in Brachos tells us, God only gives wisdom to the wise. So how did anyone ever become wise? Where did the first piece of wisdom come from? Okay. Now we're going to explore another very interesting expression in this week's Parsha. Take a look at number 7. When in Parshas Vayakhel it talks about those people who came to bring donations for the Mishkan. Look at number 7. Vayavayu kolish asher nesai libay. Every man whose heart carried him came. V'chol asher nadva ruchai. And anyone who had a spirit of generosity came. Heviu es Chumash Hashem. They brought God's Truma, God's donation. In other words, the pasuk is telling me that who came to offer and to contribute to the building of the Mishkan? Every man whose heart carried him. You hear this expression, guys? Rabbi say, Kol ish asher nesai. Let's make sure that it's clear. Okay. Kol ish asher nesai libai. Every man whose heart carried him. What do these words mean? Kol ish asher nesai libai. What does that mean? What does that mean? Kol ish asher nesai libai. Okay. The Ramban tells us in Parshas Kisisa that whenever God introduces the donations that are brought and the construction that was made for the Mishkan, who was the chief architect of the Mishkan? A man by the name of Betzalel. Betzalel ben Uri ben Chor Lamat Yehuda. The expression the Torah uses to introduce Betzalel was Re'ei Karasi B'Shem. In other words, wow, look what's happening here. Whenever we're about to introduce those members who were involved in building and constructing the Mishkan, the following expression is used. Re'ei Karasi Hashem B'Shem. In English, it means hold on to your seats, fasten your seatbelts, don't let your socks fall off, listen to what we're about to tell you. Betzalel is over here. He's the architect of the Mishkan. Why is it such a shock that Betzalel is the architect of the Mishkan? Says the Ramban. Because let's think about where the Jewish people have been for the last 210 years. They're in Mitzrayim. What are they doing in Mitzrayim? They're building pyramids. They're working with gross material. When I say gross, I mean coarse, thick. It's heavy labor. This is not skilled labor. This is a heavy workload. Right? They're cementing. They're building roads. Right? Imagine you go to a construction worker after he finishes paving Union Turnpike. By the way, now I want you to go and take a brush and take some paint, and I want you to draw and paint a replica of Rembrandt. He'll say what? Right? Come on. That's not what he does. He builds roads. He builds buildings. He doesn't deal with the arts. He doesn't deal with labor, with craftsmanship that requires great profundity of skill. That's not what he does. He deals with big buildings. So to tell a construction worker, I want you to sculpt a bust of a great philosopher, he'll look at you like you're off the wall. Right? This is not the type of work that he's involved in. So how in the world, after the Jews had been in Egypt for 210 years, how is it possible that the Bnei Yisrael got together and actually constructed an aron, or a shulchan, or a menorah? You know what the menorah looked like? You know how many fine flowers had to be carved out of pure gold on the menorah? I mean, who would have any idea how to do that? Who would have any idea how to weave the tapestries of the Mishkan, to weave angelic figures on the curtains of the Mishkan? How would anyone know how to do that? They know how to schlep big sticks and big blocks, but they would have no idea how to do the labor required for the elegant design of the Mishkan. Well, who would have any idea how to do that, right? You take a guy, imagine a guy, take him out of jail, take a criminal out of jail. Okay, sir, I want you to paint for me sunset over the Rocky Mountains. You say, come on, what are you talking about? So how is it possible? Which Jews were capable of constructing the Mishkan? That is why, whenever we introduce the architects of the Mishkan, the Torah uses the following expression. Re'ei karasi Hashem b'shem. See, God has called by name. You know what that means? Stand back, watch in amazement about what's happening. In other words, this is not something that is believable. Yeah?
I'm just thinking, if you have the Levian, they did not do the construction.
Yeah, but there was no school in Egypt, right? School of the fine arts. It's one thing that Paro did not make them work, but it wasn't that they were studying sculpting in Egypt, right? What were the Levium doing? They were learning. So either you were schlepping bricks or you were learning. But how would anyone know how to carve out anything out of gold, how to weave, how to sew? Who would know how to do that? Says Ramban. You know how they knew how to do that? That's the key, the secret of this pasuk. Look in number 7. Vayavayu kol ish asher nesai libai. Every man whose heart carried him. What does that mean, his heart carried him? That means a minute before this job came up, you'd ask this guy, do you have any clue how to bang a fine gold art out of a mass of gold? He would say, no, I have no clue how to do it. But a minute later, when Moshe Rabbeinu said, God commanded us to chip away and to create an aron and to create a menorah. Certain members of the Jewish people stood up. They were inspired. And as the Ramban says like this. The Ramban says, Aval matzah b'tivai sheyed al came. Although they had no teachers, there were no schools. Look at number 9. The Ramban says there were individuals who found it within their nature to be able to do this. Vayigba liboy b'darchei Hashem. By the way, that's a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim. What does that mean, Vayigba liboy b'darchei Hashem? They were, so to speak, I don't have a better translation, they were arrogant in the ways of Hashem. But that's not what it means. It's not arrogance. They were ennobled. They aspired. They had great aspirations in the ways of Hashem. In other words, they were so inspired to be able to accomplish for the sake of Hashem. It's like you have a kid, imagine you're at a baseball game, and the team's best player goes down, and the team doesn't know what to do, and there's a little kid in the stands. He said, hand over the bat. Hand over the bat. You never even went to the mountain, give me the bat. I'm going to hit. Yeah, I'm going to hit. You don't know how to play baseball. I know how to play baseball. The kid gets up there and he does it. He never was trained. He never did it before in his life. But sometimes when the task is at hand and you have the opportunity arises and somebody feels, I want to accomplish for the sake of Hashem, your heart carries you above and beyond what is possible. And if you were to ask this individual a minute before, is it possible to construct a menorah? He wouldn't know what you're talking about. But somehow he was able to bring out from deep within himself the capability to do something that is beyond his capability. That is what the word means, says the Ramban, Vayavayu kol ish asher nesa'oi libai. His heart carried him.
Excuse me, Rabbi.
Yeah.
It's not the way to know Hashem, because when Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem, what should I make about the menorah? Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know about menorah.
The menorah
Hashem showed him on the fire.
The menorah was the one exception that Moshe Rabbeinu did not know how to make. And the Vilna Gaon explains that there was a special reason he didn't know how to make the menorah, because if you add up, this is just a side point, if you add up the flowers, the buttons, the goblets on the menorah, look at Rashi, you get 42. Plus the 7 branches of the menorah is 7, plus the menorah itself is 1. That's 50. Moshe Rabbeinu did not understand the menorah. The menorah represents Tar Shabal Peh. Moshe had 49 levels of Chachma. He didn't have the 50th level of Chachma. That's why he couldn't understand the menorah. So the menorah is a separate reason why Moshe Rabbeinu cannot understand. But all of these other objects, which, you see what the Ramban is saying, they were beyond the capability of any Jew to construct them, and nevertheless, their heart carried them. And Ar Chaim HaKadosh explains, that is the difference between the expression, take a look again at number 7. Ish asher nesoi libai, v'chol asher nadvar ruchai. There are 2 midos. Midah number 1 is nedivos. You know what nedivos is? Generosity. You make $100,000 a year, you need $80,000 to live. $20,000, you don't need it. Maybe you'll need it, you don't know, yeah, no. So if you're generous, you give it to tzedakah. That's generosity, you know. Who knows? Maybe I'll need it for myself. No, I want to be generous and give up of myself. What's Nisai Libai? Nisai Libai is, you need $80,000. $20,000 you don't need. But you know how much you give? You give $30,000. What do you mean? I can't give $30,000. I need it. Nisai, the midah of Nisai Libai is to give, to do that which you can't do. Right? I could only learn 3 hours a day. I can't learn more. I have to work. I'm busy. The midah of Nadvar Ruchai is to do as much as you can. Nesai Libai is to do more than you can. I can't do more. There's a new midah. The midah is to aspire to do more than you can do. And we introduced the shiur with the following introduction. We said the following. We said that this evening we're going to present an idea that is not just important and is not just fundamental. Okay? The Rambam writes there are 13 ikram, there are 13 principles of faith. But we're going to present an idea today that you can make the case is the most fundamental idea in Judaism. And even though it's the most fundamental idea in Judaism, most people have never heard it in their entire lives. And you'll see. How could that be? How could there be an idea in Judaism that is so fundamental and no one ever heard it? Wait and see. Okay, so that's what the Ramban tells us. The Ramban tells us that there were individuals who by their very nature were not physically capable of constructing the Mishkan. And how did they do it? Their hearts carried them. They were inspired. They aspired to do that which is impossible. Says Rabbi Yerucham Halevi Levavitz, the Mashgiach, the original Mashgiach of the Mir Yeshiva. I believe this is the first time we're featuring him at the Shiur. He says, this Ramban is the secret of success in Judaism. Why? Let's talk about a different topic first. Let's talk about, in outside of the yeshiva, outside of the world of Torah, they call it the real world, right? So let's talk about what they name the real world. In the real world, how do you become wealthy? Well, some people, they're born into it. They don't have any skills. They're not even smart, and somehow they become wealthy. How do you become successful? You always have people, they're successful, and they're doing everything wrong. But for the most part, let's talk about the people who are extremely successful. How do they become successful? Step one is they have great aspirations. They aspire for greatness. When I say aspire, you know what the word aspire means? They dream. They have, what?
They have a goal.
They have a goal. They have a certain initiative. They have a certain feeling of they want to accomplish. They have, in Hebrew it's called yazama. They plan. Okay? If you were to take most successful people, Rubam Kekulam, the majority of them, had great aspirations. Okay? If you take someone who has no aspiration whatsoever, chances are they will never become successful. Now you always have exceptions to the rule. But in order to get to the highest level, you have to want to get to the highest level. Very rarely will someone get to the highest madrega in any endeavor if they didn't want to get there first. Okay? That's basically the first step, the first ingredient of success. The first ingredient of success is you have to want to be successful. If you don't want to be successful, you're never going to be successful. If you don't aspire to great success, you won't even be slightly successful. Maybe if you aspire for tremendous success, maybe you'll be lucky, you'll be a little bit successful. But that's the first ingredient. The first ingredient is aspiration, she'ifa, drive. You have to be driven. Yazama in Hebrew. You have to be driven. Says Rabbi Yerucham, this is not only how it works in the physical world, in the real world, this is how it works in the world of spirituality. If a person wants to be great in Torah, in Tefillah, in Gemilas Chasadim, if a person wants to come close to Hashem, then if he thinks in his mind, what am I going to be with my life? I'm going to be a regular average guy, I'll be an average guy, an average Jew. Someone who aspires to be an average Jew will not even be a low Jew. Someone who aspires to be above average, maybe he'll get to first base. Someone who aspires to be like the Gadol Hadar, the biggest tzaddik in the generation, that person has a chance. That's the key. The key to get to first base is you have to want to hit a home run. The key to get the first down is you have to want to get a touchdown. If you're not shooting to hit a home run, you'll never get a single. Okay, sometimes, you have to shoot for a single also, right? But that's the key. The key is, if you want to have success in spirituality, you have to aspire to the stars. Says Rabbi Yerucham. Now this is an amazing idea. What is the main difference between us and the Rishonim, right? We have a concept in Judaism, Yeridas Hadoros. As the generations progress, we get weaker and weaker and weaker as we move away from Har Sinai. That's a certain concept. Whether there's a strong source for this concept, it's dubious. But that's in general the progression of history, is that as we move away from Har Sinai, we get weaker. So if we were to pinpoint, what is the main difference between us, our generation, and the generation of the Rishonim? So if you would have asked me, I would have said, they were so brilliant. Their minds were open like the heavens. They were so strong-minded. And says Rabbi Rucham, there's one difference. The Rishonim aspired to reach the stars. The Rishonim aspired to reach the heavens. They dreamed of reaching the highest possible levels. But for us, we have very meager and meek dreams. In spirituality and in Ruchnius and in Judaism. Yeah, if you ask the average guy, where do you want to be? What type of Jew do you want to be? Like everybody else. Somebody who has in their mind, I want to be like everybody else, has no real hope to achieve anything. You can't think you want to be like everyone else. You know what you have to think? You have to think, I want everyone. I want to learn Torah like Rabbi Yashiv Zolgazunstein. I want to do chesed like the biggest Baal Chesed. I want to daven with kavanah like the biggest tzaddik. Will I be like Rabbi Yashiv? Maybe, yeah, maybe no. Will I be the biggest tzaddik? Maybe yeah, maybe no. But you have to want to. That's step one. If a person really has any hope of being successful in Judaism, he has to want to reach the highest level. So you'll ask, come on, Rabbi, I already left yeshiva. That's what they used to tell me when I was in yeshiva, right? The mashgiach would say, everyone should dream to be the Gadol Hadar. But come on, that's not life. I mean, I'm never going to get there. It sounds like a nice idea, or a very worthy idea, or something admirable, but do I really have to think that way? Says Rabbi Rucham, this is not a nice idea. It's not a suggestion. It's not something we encourage. It's an absolute obligation. Obligation? Where does it say in the Torah that I have to want to be on the highest level? Says Rabbi Rucham, it's a medrash. Look at number 13. Tana de Be'eliyah. Says the medrash, Lefikach hayisi omer. This is a medrash, Tana de Be'eliyah. Therefore, Eliyahu says, Shekol echad ve'echad mi Yisrael chayev lomar. Every Jew is obligated to say the following: Masai yagiu ma'asai lemasei avosai Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov. When will my actions reach the actions of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? Right? Does the medrash say Ra'i loymar? Does the medrash say it's appropriate to say? Does the medrash say mutter loymar? Does the medrash say we suggest that you say? The medrash says unequivocally chayev. It's an obligation. We are obligated to say. In other words, if a person says, I'm a great guy. I came to the shiur tonight even though I was very tired. I learned for 45 minutes. I'm wonderful. You are wonderful. And you should feel very good and proud. And you should feel like you're on top of the world that you came to learn. But you should not feel complacent. You can't say, I'm a great guy. You know what you have to say? Baruch Hashem, I had the zchus to learn. When am I going to reach the level of Yaakov Avinu that he learned Torah uninterrupted for 14 years straight? Why should I say that? It's impossible. I can't learn Torah for 14 years. I can't even learn Torah for 14 minutes straight. Doesn't matter. Even if you can't learn Torah for 14 minutes, you still have to say, when am I going to be able to learn Torah for 14 years straight? When am I going to be able to sit on the Akedah like Yitzchak Avinu? I davened Marv for 2.5 minutes. I'm a great guy. You're a great guy. But you still have to say, when am I going to be able to stand still like Yitzchak Avinu at the Akedah? When am I going to reach the level of chesed of Avraham Avinu? What do you mean? I did chesed. I gave my friend a ride. You're wonderful. You're a tzaddik, and you have to feel good about it. Right? There's a very fine balance. In other words, while at the same time a person has to rejoice in whatever he's able to accomplish, but he can never feel complacent. He can never feel smug. I've done it. No. Chayiv, Adam, Loimar, Masai, Yagiu, Masai, Lamasai, Avosa, Avram, Yitzchak. Okay? So, I think we've been successful in demonstrating that there is an obligation for a person to aspire to the heavens. Yeah, but how do I have the right to say that this is such a fundamental concept, that it may be the most fundamental concept in Judaism? Where do I have a right to say that from? Let's see.
Rabbi, you're going to get the zachar for saying such a thing?
Yeah. We're going to see you can get tremendous char. Yeah.
Why? But the truth is this. We're
No.
not going to be like Abraham Avinu. We're not going to be like Yitzchak.
We'll see. We'll see.
We're not going to become and like Yaakov.
We'll see.
14 years.
So you ask
So
when?
who wants to make him fool? We want to make
No,
Hashem?
you really want to though.
I want, but am I going to be? No.
That's not.
when, that's all.
That's not your business. Your business is I want that. That's what I want.
How do you want to be a millionaire? Right? Try.
We'll see. We'll see. 1 second. We have a little bit of time. Let me finish this up. Okay. Back to the Chacham, right? We started the Shiur by asking, Chacham ahu omer, what does the wise man say? Right? Right in the Haggadah. Ma ha'edos v'hachukim v'hamishpatim asher tziva Hashem l'keinu asam. What are these mitzvos? Groisa Chacham, right? Imagine a guy comes in, he sees you washing Negel Wasser. What are you doing? Right? This is who we call a Chacham. He sees us eating matzah. He sees us bringing the Korban Pesach. He wants to know what it is. I mean, who doesn't know what it is? What kind of Chacham is that? Says Rabbeinu Yonah. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says, Eizehu Chacham, who is a wise man? Haloi made me call Adam, who learns from everybody. If you would have asked me, who's the wise man? I would have said, you know who's the wise man? Who doesn't need to learn from anybody. He's so wise, he doesn't need to learn from anyone. No. Rabbeinu Yonah says, the Mishnah says, who's the wise man? He learns from everyone. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, right? Rabbeinu Yonah is one of the classic commentaries on Pirkei Avos. Rabbeinu Yonah tells us, what is the definition of a Chacham? A Chacham is not someone who knows a lot of information, who has a lot of wisdom. That's not a Chacham. The definition of a Chacham is someone who loves Chachma. He pursues Chachma, he runs after Chachma. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, someone who is very smart and he knows a lot, but he doesn't love Chachma. If he knows somebody knows something that he doesn't know, he's not going to lower himself to ask that person. So this individual does not love Chachma. He has it, he doesn't love it. If he doesn't love it, he's not a Chacham. However, Rabbeinu Yonah says, Acha, in the third line, Acha oevosa, someone who loves Chachma, umisabe eleha, and desires it. Af al pi she'eno yodea klum. He doesn't know zippo. He doesn't know anything. Hareza nikra chacham. He's a chacham. In other words, the definition of a chacham is someone who loves wisdom. Why? I mean, the guy doesn't know anything. Why is he a chacham? Because if he loves chachma so much and he's going to pursue it, he will get there. He will achieve it. He'll get there. He'll become a Talmid Chacham. What? We're talking about Chachmas HaTorah. Okay? Someone who loves Chachma will achieve it. Someone who doesn't love Chachma, nah. He may have a lot, it will dwindle, it will lessen, and he'll lose it. So the definition of a Chacham is someone who loves, desires Chachma. Okay? Now, let's get a little bit of an example, right? If we would want to learn, if we want to try to emulate someone who acquired a lot of Chachma, who was Chacham Mikol Adam? Shlomo HaMelech, right? So, let us see, how did Shlomo HaMelech achieve Chachma, right? Right? He wrote many Sfarim of Sifrei Chachma, Kohel Asher Hashem, he wrote Mishlei, right? Mishlei, the Chachma of Mishlei. How did he become such a Chacham?
He prayed to Hashem.
One day, Hashem appears to Shlomo in Givon. He says, what do you want? I'll give it to you. You want long life? You want money? Right? You want honor? What does Shlomo HaMelech say? Give me understanding to know what's right. Leiv lahavin tov v'ra. Give me chachma. Says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. What did Hashem say? Because you asked for the correct thing. And not just, Shlomo didn't say, give me chachma and this. Give me chachma and something else. Even though, right, we value life, we value long life more than anything else. What's more valuable than life? One thing. There's only one thing more valuable than life. Wisdom. Right? As the Rambam says, if somebody kills b'shogeg, somebody kills accidentally and he has to go into Golos, so he goes into Golos, and who else has to follow him into Golos? His Rabbi. Why? Because it says, if someone kills b'shogeg, he has to live. What kind of life will it be for this individual if he doesn't have someone to teach him Torah? Says the Rambam, for the people who have wisdom, a life without wisdom is death. To live without filling your mind with chachma is not life. The definition of life is not just, respiratory activity and the brain waves working. That's not life. The definition of life is acquiring chachma. And therefore, when Shlomo HaMelech demonstrated that even more valuable than money and honor and life, what's the most valuable thing? Wisdom. So what is he demonstrating? He's demonstrating his desire, his love of chachma. You love chachma, you are a chacham. That's the key to acquiring chachma. You have to love it, you have to desire it, you have to want it more than anything else. That was the secret of Shlomo HaMelech. Okay? Let us go back to one of the earlier points we made. Sefer Daniel says, Yahev chachmisa l'chakimim. God gives wisdom to the wise. What does the Gemara tell us in Brachos? We learned, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu noisein chachma ela l'mi sheyesh by chachma. God only grants wisdom to those who have wisdom. So we ask the obvious question. If God only gives wisdom to those who have it, how did anyone ever have it to begin with for God to then give it to him? In other words, if God only gives wisdom to those who have wisdom, how did anyone ever have wisdom for God to give it to them? That's the question of the Nefesh HaChaim. Says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, what is Chachma? Chachma is not just wisdom.
Study.
What's a Chacham? Not someone who has Chachma. What? Ratzon. Very good. What's your name? Yeshua is telling us Chachma is the desire for wisdom. Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu nosein Chachma. God only grants wisdom to those who have wisdom. What does it mean to have wisdom? They want it, they desire it, they pursue it, they love it. That is the definition of Chacham. And that's why in the Haggadah, this I once heard from Rabbi Victor Miller, Zechatz HaGabracha. Why in the Haggadah do we say, Chacham Mahu Omer, and he doesn't even know what matzah is, he doesn't even know what Pesach is? So what? But he's asking what it is. That means he wants to understand what it is. He may not have one iota of Chachma, but the fact that he's asking, respectfully, what is this? What is that? Oh, he's pursuing wisdom. He's already given the title Chacham. He has graduated to be a Chacham. A Chacham is not someone who has Chachma, it's someone who wants to have Chachma. Hence, says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, that's what the Gemara means. Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu noisein Chachma ela l'mi sheyesh by Chachma. Who is that individual that has Chachma that God then gives it to him? The one who wants it.
You say the word curious? It's curious?
It's more than curious. It's you aspire for it. You want it, you're driven for it. It's not just, like Curious George. Let me see, this looks interesting, let me try. It's a little bit more than, right? It is a curiosity, but it's a more a driven curiosity. Okay?
Serious.
What?
It's serious.
Yeah. He aspires for greatness. He aspires for Chachma. That was the midah of those who constructed the Mishkan. How they have any clue how to do it? They had no clue. So how'd they do it? They wanted to. And if you want to, it's almost as if you can. Okay? As they say, if there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, but
There's a will. Okay, let's move on a little bit. By the way, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, it's a famous story. He was once, he needed a little vacation. He was learning in the yeshiva in Grodno. So he went to visit his uncle, Rabbi Avram Yafin, in Nevardik. And he says to his uncle, who's Rosh Yeshiva of Nevardik, Uncle, show me the best student in the yeshiva. So Rabbi Avram Yafin takes him around. He says, see this guy over here? He's the biggest masmid in the yeshiva. And you see that guy? He's the smartest boy in the yeshiva. And that kid over there, he's the biggest baki. And that one over there, he's the biggest Yarei Shamayim. But you want to know who's the best? He says, you see that bacher learning in the corner? He's the best bacher in the yeshiva. So Reb Chaim Shmulevitz asks his uncle, 1 second. This one is the biggest masmid. That one is the biggest amkan. This one is the biggest baki. This one is the biggest Yarei Shamayim. So how could that one be the best boy in the yeshiva? He's the biggest mevakesh. He is the most driven. He's the one who aspires. He is the one who loves Chachma. By the way, who did that bacher turn out to be? The Stipler. The Stipler guy. Okay, so that's the midah. The midah of Ba'akashas HaChachma. Doesn't mean you know anything. Doesn't mean you're a big Yarei Shamayim. It doesn't mean you're a big Baki, you're a big Amkan. but you want to be. You want to be. Okay. Says Reb Shamson Rafal Hirsch. Take a look at number 18. The first thing they did when they came into the Beis HaMikdash in the morning is they did the malacha, the avoda of Hotzoas Hadeshen. You know what Hotzoas Hadeshen is?
No.
During the nighttime, the carbon, the sacrifice, burnt on the altar, on the Mizbeach, and a lot of ashes gathered. The very first thing they did in the morning was they cleared off all the ashes. Says Reb Shamshon Fal Hirsch, what is the meaning of this avodah? Why was that the first thing they did? Reb Shamshon Fal Hirsch says, because when you begin a day of serving Hashem, if you're thinking in the back of your mind, wow, you know about all the great karbanos we brought yesterday? I brought yesterday a carbon tamid shel shachar, carbon tamid shel ben arbayim, the minchas chavitim, the asiras ha'efa. We did so much yesterday. Look at all these ashes. You're thinking about what you did yesterday. That will spell death for today. When you think about past accomplishments, when you think about how much you've accomplished in the past, and you have a certain smug complacency, that is the beginning of the end. And therefore, you know how you begin the daily avodah? You clear every vestige of ash as if nothing was ever done in this place. Because if you want to start a day of serving Hashem, it has to be as if you've never done one thing in your entire life. Because if your whole life you go around thinking, yeah, I already won so much, I already accomplished so much. So, maybe you don't, then you've done it all. Maybe you're ready for the next stage of your existence. For a person to be successful in this world, Haitzas Hadeshen, clear off every vestige of ash. Forget about anything you ever did. You wake up in the morning, it's as if you've never done anything in your life. Says Reb Shamson Fal Hirsch will read beautiful words. Take a look at number 18 on page 3. On the third line, the last word. Fresh, as if nothing had yet been accomplished. Does the beginning of every new day call us to go to our mission with full new devotion and sacrifice. And nothing that has already been done may lessen the energy with which we go to do our duty. The thought of what has already been accomplished can be the death of that which is still to be accomplished. Woe unto him who with smug self-complacency thinks he can rest on his laurels, on what he has already achieved, and who does not meet the task of every fresh day with full devotion as if it were the first day of his life's work. The Ha'itzias Hadeshen, the Torah says. Every trace of yesterday's sacrifice is to be removed from the hearth on the altar. Okay. But we still have not explained, if this is such a fundamental idea for a person to yearn and desire and aspire and dream to reach the highest level, and we learned this is an obligation, this is not just recommended practice. Can we make the case that this is a fundamental idea? So let's see. I'm going to present to you a few lines from Rabbeinu Yonah and the Shari Tshuva, a few lines that literally dozens of people have struggled to understand what Rabbeinu Yonah means, and those of you who are lucky enough to be here tonight will see the true meaning of what Rabbeinu Yonah says. Okay, take a look at number 23. This is a mind-boggling chiddush. Okay, and you'll see literally dozens of commentaries and perushim have been written explaining these words, and we're going to see tonight, Be'ezus Hashem, the correct interpretation. Look at number 23. Rabbeinu Yonah is talking about, many people think it's one thing, the purpose of life is don't do Averos, don't desecrate Shabbos, don't eat chametz on Pesach. But, doing mitzvos, it's not really as important because, look, you know what the proof is? If I desecrate Shabbos, if I desecrate Pesach or Yom Kippur, right, the Torah mandates severe punishment, right? Misa b'dei shamayim, kares. Yeah, but if I don't put on tefillin, there's no punishment in the Torah. There's no punishment in the Torah for not sitting in the sukkah. So one may mistakenly think not violating Averos is worse than not fulfilling mitzvos. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, no. The great achievements in life are fulfilling certain mitzvos in the Torah. And now Rabbeinu Yonah lists for us what are the main categories of mitzvos that it is our job in this world to accomplish. Right? If I were to ask you, Rav Osai, List for me the main mitzvos in the Torah that it's our obligation to fulfill. What would you say? The main mitzvos in the Torah. What?
Shabbos. Learning Torah.
Learning Torah, right? We know learning Torah, that's number one. Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. Learning Torah is the most important mitzvah. And I'm not just talking about specific mitzvos, I'm talking about general categories. I'll give you some hints. Avas Hashem, Rabbeinu Yonah says, right? Love of God. Right? Like it says in Devarim, Hashem says, what do I ask of you? Kiyim liyira, yira shamayim. Avodas Hashem, tefillah, gemilas chasadim. Right? These are all the main categories of our service of Hashem.
Rabbi, which one is first?
Torah.
To love Hashem or to do the Torah or to daven in today?
They're all important. They're all important. We'll discuss that. But Rabbeinu Yonah says, take a look at number 23. Okay? And he says a line which is completely mind-boggling. And literally, people have been struggling to discover the meaning of these words, and we'll see what it means. We'll take a look at number 23. V'das, says Rabbeinu Yonah. Ki hamalos ha'olyonos nimsuru lanu b'mitzvah saseh. The main achievements have been given to us through positive mitzvahs. Kimo, for example, malos habechira, the level of free choice. Malos Talmud Torah, learning Torah. Malos leches v'darchei Hashem, chesed. Bitachon. Rabbeinu Yonah goes on to say, avas Hashem, yiras Hashem, dveikus. Listen carefully. There is one line in Rabbeinu Yonah that it's impossible to understand what he's talking about. Right? We know everybody's familiar that one of the great achievements in this world is Torah, Avas Hashem, Yiras Hashem. Could somebody please tell me what the man is talking about? In the very first attribute that he lists, Mailas Habachira, the attribute of free choice. What in the world is he talking about? What's the attribute of free choice? I mean, we all believe we have free choice. Everybody knows that what we do in this world, nobody's compelled, nobody's forced to do a mitzvah or not to do an avera. Right? Nobody's forced to do anything. But what mitzvah is the mitzvah of Bechira? There's no mitzvah in the Torah of Bechira. I mean, you always have to choose to do the right thing. What's the mitzvah of Bechira? Well, what's the Rabbeinu Yonah talking about? If you could look through all the Monei HaMitzvos, look at the Rambam, look at the Ramban, look at the Smag, the Bahag, the Sefer Hilchos Ketano, Sefer Hilchos Gedolos, the Sefer Achinuch. Nobody lists Mailas HaBechira as one of the mitzvahs in the Torah. And in fact, Rav Matisyahu Solomon asked, just to keep it bekitzer, we don't understand what Rabbeinu Yonah is saying. What mitzvah is the mitzvah of Bechira? Of course. Either when you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, you do it. Right? We understand there's a concept of Bechira. But what does Rabbeinu Yonah mean? Malos HaBechira. And why is that listed as the very first attribute that we need to achieve in this world? I understand why number 2 is Torah. Torah really should be number 1. That's right. Everybody says Torah is the most important mitzvah. Number 2 after Torah is Chesed. Right? The Chafetz Chaim writes that the Gemara says Aleph Beis Gimel Dalet. Aleph Beis stands for Aleph Bina, learn Torah. Gimel Dalet, Gimel Dalet, Chesed. These are the 2 ikarim. The 2 main mitzvahs we have to involve ourselves are Torah is number 1, Chesed is number 2. What?
Torah, it says Chaim HaMachzikim. I said you choose the Chaim. That's Torah. It's no confusion.
So what do you mean?
It's Torah.
Well, Bechira is doing the mitzvahs? Whenever you do a mitzvah, you're choosing correct. I mean, there's no mitzvah of Bechira. What's the mitzvah?
What is the mitzvah of Bechira?
Bechira is a concept. But what's the mitzvah of Bechira?
I gave you the good and the bad, and you chose the light.
Every mitzvah, of course.
It can tell you have the option, but I'm suggesting to choose the Chaim.
So what is the Maila? I understand the Maila of Bitachon. And Bitachon is something I have to work on to achieve. What am I achieving with Bechira? There's a mitzvah to do mitzvahs? Every mitzvah is a mitzvah.
What is the Bechira? Bechira is a choice to do.
No, but Rabbeinu Yonah is not talking about the concept of Bechira. Rabbeinu Yonah is listing the main achievements in this world, and number 1 on the list is the achievement of free choice. What achievement?
I told you, Bacharta B'chaim. It's very simple.
No. What?
Bacharta B'chaim. We give you the direction.
No. We're not listing, Gabi, we're not listing concepts here. We're listing ma'alos.
No, but Ma'alat Bechira, he didn't separate the Bechira from any other concept. He gives it together. It's one word.
Okay, we'll talk after. We'll talk after.
No, but it's
Simply put, Rabbeinu Yonah is incomprehensible. And literally, I've seen very many commentaries to try to explain this word, but what's always the best when the person himself explains what he means. Rabbeinu Yonah wrote a sefer that most people are familiar with the first page, but I don't know too many people got past that. There's a sefer called Sharei HaAvoda, right? The very end of the sefer Sharei HaAvoda, Rabbeinu Yonah writes the following. Rabbi saying, Rabbeinu Yonah writes the following. Rabbeinu Yonah says like this. You know what? It's Kedai. Let's see it inside a little bit. In number 25, Rabbeinu Yonah tells us. He says, a man should think and place to his heart to serve Hashem at all times with all his heart, all his soul, all his possessions. What? On the third line, Rabbeinu Yonah says, Kedei lehasig mala kemalas hagadolim hashabaras. That you want to achieve the levels of the greatest in the world. Who are the greatest? Malas Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, David, Shlomo. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, a person should aspire to reach the levels of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and Moshe. Because, says Rabbeinu Yonah, they didn't do more than they could. They did as much as they could. So, we should aspire to reach their levels. Okay, at the end of that paragraph, V'lo yisrashel afilu sha'achas, don't slacken off even for a moment. V'lo yasor hadavar milvavai afilu rega echad. Don't let this thought leave your mind. What? To aspire to reach the levels of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Next paragraph. Okay? Says Rabbeinu Yonah. Every day, increase your strength. Strengthen yourself. Lehischazik, bilalos, to rise. Mimida lamida, from one level to the next. Umi madrega lemadrega ba'avodas boro. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, here's the key words. V'yachmod, you should desire. V'yichsov, you should yearn. Lehasig ba'avoda ma she'ein yadai maseges. To achieve in your service of Hashem that which you can't achieve. You hear this? I can't learn like Rav Moshe. I'm going to learn 19 hours a day. So why should I want to learn 19 hours a day? No, says Rabbeinu Yonah, you have to want to do the impossible. Okay, then he says, you should associate with those people who are accomplishing more than you, and emulate them, and it's similarly in every single midah. Okay, 4 lines from the end of that paragraph. Look what he says. Every character trait. Avas Hashem, you should aspire to reach the highest level of Avas Hashem. Yiras Hashem, you should aspire to reach the highest level. Tefillah, you should aspire to daven like the biggest tzaddik. Yachmodo, so you should desire it. V'yisave eleha. V'yivchar ba, you should choose it. Okay? You should choose it. Okay, lahasiga. Next paragraph. And if you desire it, and you aspire to it, and you want it, and you dream for it, you'll be rewarded as if you got it. You hear that? If a person in his mind thinks, I'm only little old me, but I want to be Rebbe Yoshev. Will I be? Won't I be? Who knows? When you get up to Shemayim, you'll be standing right next to him. If a person, says Rabbeinu Yonah, desires to be on the highest level, he will be rewarded as if he's on the highest level. Look what he says. V'al ha'bechira. Rabbeinu Yonah is not talking about free choice over here. Like most people thought when the Torah says, U'bacharta b'chayim, you can ask 99.9% of people, what does the Torah mean, U'bacharta b'chayim? You should choose life? Free choice. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, that's not what it means. You know what it means, U'bacharta b'chayim? You should desire the highest levels of life. What are they? The highest levels of Torah, the highest levels of Yira, the highest level of Ava. V'al ha'bechira bilvad yekabel schar ki'ilu hisig chemda. And for the choice alone, for the desire alone, for the aspiration alone, you will be rewarded as if you achieved it. You know why? Because you can't do any more. If I am doing my utmost, but I want to reach the highest level, I will be rewarded as if I'm on the highest level. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, here are the key words. Ki ha-bechira mitzvah sa'asehi shenemar uvacharta b'chayim. This line of Rabbeinu Yonah is the key to understand something that I have not yet found this interpretation. Rabbeinu Yonah is saying explicitly what he means. When Rabbeinu Yonah writes that even before the level of learning Torah, even before the level of chesed, the very fundamental level of being a Jew is, I don't want to be an average Jew, I don't want to be an above average Jew. I want to be the highest, on the highest possible level. Will I get there? We don't know. We don't know. Nobody can know. But if I do my best, and I want to get there, A, I'm rewarded as if I'm there, and B, I'm fulfilling the mitzvah of uvacharta b'chaim. That's what it means to choose life. To choose life doesn't mean to make the right choice. It means to have the right desires, the right yearnings, the right aspirations. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, v'amru Chazal, kol mi sha'ala b'libai lasis mitzvah. If I think of doing a mitzvah, v'nenas, and circumstances prevent me, v'lo yasan, I didn't do it, mala olav hakasav kilo asa, the Torah considers it as if I did. In other words, I'm on a very low level. I want to be on the highest level possible. I can't get there. Circumstances limit me. Hashem will reward me as if I'm there. Nothing to worry about.
Rabbi.
One second. Let me finish up here. Right? Some people think, it's very harmful for a person to have great aspirations because it's going to be very depressing. Why is it depressing? I do as best as I can, and whatever I can't do, I wish I could do. Very, very ennobling. Why should you walk around That's what Rabbi Rucham told us. The key to any success is the aspiration. If you don't aspire for the highest level, you won't get anywhere. And if you aspire for the highest level, Hashem will reward you as if you're there. And then Rabbeinu Yonah adds one point. One added aspect emerges from this new mitzvah, okay? I just want to point out. None of the other Rishonim list the mitzvah b'chira. According to Rabbeinu Yonah, it is the most fundamental mitzvah in the Torah. It is listed before anything else. Look what he says. Ki mitoch sheyivchar b'amidahi. If a person chooses to want to reach the highest level, the yavin, and to understand, the yaskel, and to comprehend, malas hamasigosa, and yishtado tamil asig, and he tries, says Rabbeinu Yonah, Hashem Yisparach, Yazer Oso, Bama She'en Yativo Yechola Lahasig. Number one point, Rabbeinu Yonah says, if you desire to reach the highest level, Hashem will reward you as if you got there. Number two, Hashem will help you get there. What do you mean? It's impossible. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, God will help you reach levels that it was literally impossible for you to achieve. Where do we see an example of this? This week's Parsha. The Bnei Yisrael, they could not construct the Mishkan. Naturally, it was impossible. They didn't have the skills, they didn't have the talents, but what does the Pasuk say? Nisai libai. Their hearts carried them. They found it within, they were inspired, they were ambitious, they had the desire and the yearning, they were able to do it. Says Rabbeinu Yonah two things. Number one, right, we said, not only is the aspiration and the ambition suggested, Chazal say it's required. Chayiv, Adam, Loimar, Masai, Yagiu, Maisai, Maisai, Avoisai, Avram, Yaakov. We are obligated to say, when will we reach the highest levels? You'll ask, where did Chazal get this from? How do Chazal know? How do our sages know that we're obligated to say this? It's a pasuk in the Torah. Ubacharta b'chayim. Choose life. And we'll suggest that the reason why the Rambam and all the other Rishonim don't count this is because this is so fundamental, and this is so elementary, and this is so basic, that since, as Rabbi Rucham said, if you don't desire high levels, you can't accomplish anything, this is not one of the mitzvos, this is the introduction to the mitzvos. This is the number one step. In order to get to first base, you need to want to hit a home run, and hence, in the Haggadah, Chacham Mahu Eimer, what does the Chacham say? What kind of Chacham is this? He's a big Chacham, he doesn't know? He wants to know. If he wants to know, Mala Olav Hakasav Kilu Asa, in the eyes of the Rebbe Shalom, he's already a Chacham. Thank you for coming, thank you for listening.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.